So the New York Giants are coming off a huge home upset against the Philadelphia Eagles last Thursday night. Now they've got another mountain to climb, a mile-high mountain in Denver on Sunday. Let's talk about it next on the Big Blue Breakdown live. Hello again, everybody. I'm Paul Dottino, and welcome to the Big Blue Breakdown Live. So glad you could join us tonight as we are back at our regularly scheduled time, Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll be here for at least the next hour, and as I always say, if you guys want to keep talking Giants football, we'll extend the program. We'll go 90 minutes. We've been doing 90 minutes for I don't know how many weeks now because you guys seem to want it. So I'm here as long as you want me to be. Now, in the meantime, let's go over what's going on with your 2-4 New York Giants, who have won 2 of their past 3 games. They come off a dominating upset over the defending Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles last Thursday night at MetLife Stadium. But now they've got themselves a real tough challenge. The Denver Broncos have easily the best defense in the National Football League. They are formidable in many, many ways. So we're going to take a deep dive into the paths to victory, as Parcells used to say. Bill Parcells always believed in those things. There's a path to victory for every team every week. You just got to figure out how many paths there are and how many are easier to navigate than some others. We're going to go through that in a little bit. But first thing I want to do is tell you guys you can hit me up on the chat to the right of your screen. I always love hearing from you guys. Always want to hear, let's see here. We have somebody telling me that Big Blue YouTube is down. I wonder why that is. So says Blue Dosia 1975 says YouTube is down. Well, we're going to have to try to check on that. I hope that that's something that that they can fix momentarily. I certainly don't know how to fix that. I'm not a techie guy. So if it is something on my end, I'm afraid I can't help. I can't help that one out. Anyway. All right. So here we go. Oh, Aiden Fink says YouTube is back up. It was lagging at first. Well, look, not to worry. Very few people can keep up with me anyway. It's fine. All right. So before we get to your comments, and as always, if you'd like to participate in the program tonight, because really it is your program, hit me up with the QR code. You can always use your cell phone to get in that way. Or you could dial me up on the telephone using the activation link at the bottom of the screen. Or you could use a video call as well. Here's the bottom line, though. The Giants had their first regular practice of the week. On Monday, they went through film work and a little bit of a walkthrough, so to speak. Went through corrections after they gave the guys 3 days off following the win over the Eagles. Today was the first real practice in preparation for the Broncos. Now, the following 5 players did not work today. Flanagan, Fowles, and Slayton were both out because of a hamstring. Now, Slayton already missed the Eagles game. He was on the side limbering up and loosening up with the trainers throughout the course of practice. He did not do anything. He was in the locker room. He was talking to people. He seemed in good spirits, but I get the impression from today at least that his odds of playing are not great. Well, little Jordan Humphrey came through last week, activated off the practice squad, had a real nice 34-yard catch, high-pointing a bomb down the right side early in the first quarter, and did a nice job in the game. And so the good news is, if Slayton doesn't go, little Jordan Humphrey has another opportunity in back-to-back weeks to put up some production. And let's not forget, he is a former Denver Bronco. which means he's obviously going to be souped up for the game. And he also knows a little bit about that Denver Broncos defense. So that may not necessarily be such a bad thing for the Giants to have Humphrey up for a second consecutive week. Flanagan Fowles, of course, is one of the Giants' special teams aces. They still have top 5 NFL coverage units in both kickoffs and punts. They've been doing just fine. They've been picking guys up off the street, grabbing guys from the practice squad, throwing them on the 53 on game day, and they have all been producing on special teams. Giants know, they know right now, as it stands, this game in particular, and I know we're going to delve more into this later, they have a huge edge over the Broncos on special teams. It is not even close. That's one of the 3 elements in a game: offense, defense, special teams. The Giants should dominate this game on special teams. And that can be one of the ways, okay, that the Giants can do what they need to do to come out of there with a victory. All right, who else did not practice today? Center John Michael Schmitz is in the concussion protocol. Head coach Brian Dable did not say exactly what stage he is in, but he did not come outside to watch practice. So that's never good because that means he's in the early stages. Bozeman has a sore ankle. He did not practice. Again, he is one of the Giants' special teams guys. And Tay Banks was excused for personal reasons. Cordell Flott has done a real nice job getting more and more playing time at the corner opposite Paulson Adebo. And did you see that interception that he made last week against Philadelphia? The first pick of the season thrown by Jalen Hurts. Wow. Dynamite play, the way he reacted to the ball and went right in there and scapped it right out of the air. Beautiful play by Cordell Flott, who wound up returning the ball over 60 yards. So if Banks doesn't, for whatever reason, whatever's going on with him, if he doesn't make it back and is available for the game, Cordell Flott has proven that he can do the job just fine. So those are the particulars that are really significant for the Giants injury-wise. They did have guys who were limited. I don't get the impression that these limited guys are necessarily guys to worry about for the game. Jermaine Illuminor played despite being limited with a sore back last week. They're now listing him with a shoulder and a back, but he was limited. Again, I'm going through this just because the list came out today. It is the practice report. It's the official practice report. Doesn't necessarily mean you need to worry about these guys. Chauncey Golston, the defensive end, sore neck, was limited. Jalen Hyatt, sore ankle, was limited. Hyatt made a really nice third down conversion catch on one of the Giants' early touchdown drives in the Philadelphia game. And then, if you watched every play, and sometimes people will miss a play or two, right? How about the play in the end zone? Absolutely blew by the secondary. And Dart lofts a long bomb into the back left corner of the end zone where the DB had no choice but to harass Hyatt and literally tie up one of his arms. Hyatt tried to make a one-handed stab, could not, but he had beaten the secondary so badly that the Eagles had no choice. The throw was perfect. The route was outstanding. They had to commit the pass interference. First and goal, Giants from the 1, and then Skattebo punched it in. So anyway, that play, even though it was not a reception and did not credit to Hyatt's stats, still a play that deserves mentioning for him. Defensive lineman Roy Robertson Harris listed with a sore knee as limited. And then Victor Dimukeji, full participation. He is trying to come back from a torn pec. Remember, he was hurt way back over the summer, and they decided to get him on PUP, and he has now been activated for practice, and we will see now over the next few weeks if he's able to make it back to the roster. Those are the Giants' injuries. The Broncos' injuries today. Outside linebacker Jonah Ellis, shoulder injury, did not participate. Limited Dre Greenlaw, linebacker with a quad. Now, Greenlaw has been out, and the truth of the matter is they missed him a lot because he's a quality player. And if there is an Achilles heel on the Broncos defense, and we'll talk about this later, it is in their linebacking core. Jonathan Cooper, outside linebacker and pass rusher, sore quad, limited. And then full participation for two of their more important defensive players. Outside linebacker Nick Bonito leads the NFL, of course, as we all know, with 8 sacks. And Alex Singleton with an injured thumb. He and Bonito both in full participation during practice today. Singleton leads the Broncos, tied for 11th in the NFL with 51 tackles. Okay. That's the practice report and the injury report as for today between with the two teams, the Giants and the Broncos. Let me go quickly over to some of your chats here because you guys have been trying to chime in on a few things before we talk about this matchup in particular. I hope we are back up and streaming live back on YouTube. I certainly hope so. Again, tell your friends, okay? Because the more people who want to interact here, the more people who comment and ask questions and talk and post, the better the program, obviously. This program's about you guys, the fans. Big Blue, 4751 says, good evening. Aiden Fink says, great win on Thursday. Cry, Eagles, cry. Let's beat the Broncos now and make it 2 in a row. Packing for Denver right now will be my 15th stadium. Go to a different away game every year with my dad. Very cool. Enjoy. Have a wonderful time. Game time temperature. Well, I shouldn't say game time. Mid-afternoon temperature. The game is going to be 2 o'clock Denver time, 4 o'clock New York time. I understand it's supposed to be like 76 degrees and sunny on Sunday in Denver. Whether or not it's exactly that at 2 o'clock, I don't know. But it's supposed to be a gorgeous day. Here in New York, it's going to be 71, I understand, according to the forecast. 71 and sunny. So regardless of where the game would be played, sounds like it's going to be a picture-perfect day for football. So enjoy your trip, for sure. I've been out there to what used to be known as Invesco Field, and I don't know if it still is. I don't keep track of sponsorship names. You know, I remember years and years and years ago, the San Francisco 49ers played in Candlestick Park, right? They shared the same stadium with baseball San Francisco Giants. And I remember the first time that we had gone there after they changed the corporate name of Candlestick. And I forget what they called it, but that's not important. We get there, and I've got to do the radio pregame show. And I used to do the show on site, live, home and away. So I intro the game and I say, live from Candlestick Park. You know why? Because if I named, and let me take a look at what the name of the company was, just for the heck of it, just to make this a little bit more, let's see here, Candlestick Park, name change. Candlestick Park was what? Oh, I can't even find it. I forget what they changed it to. But anyway, here's the point. Oh, here it is. Here it is. Hold on. Candlestick Park. It was changed to what? What was it changed to? 3Com. There you go. So I open up the pregame show live from Candlestick Park in San Francisco. And I remember we had an engineer who was, looking at me in the booth. And he's like, no. And I blew right through it. So we get to the commercial and he goes, no, it's 3Com Park now. They changed the name. And I said, okay, but here's the problem. If I say 3Com Park, nobody in New York who's listening to New York Giants radio knows what 3Com Park is. They don't know if that's a new stadium, if that's an old stadium, if the 49ers moved. They have no idea. Everybody in New York knows when they hear Candlestick Park, they know exactly where that game is. They can picture it. They've seen it. That's where the San Francisco Giants play. That's where the San Francisco 49ers play. I'm telling my audience, this is Candlestick Park. And I did for the entire broadcast. Never changed it to 3Com. When we got back to New York, I remember calling up a friend and said, let me ask you a question. You know what 3Com Park is? He said, what is that? And I said, thank you. You just proved my point for me. Anyway. All right, let's see what we have here. Big Blue 475 says still down. I don't know if YouTube is up or down, folks. I don't know, and there's not a whole lot I can do about it. Let me see here. Let's see. I'm trying to check it out, and it looks like, I don't know. Looks like it's stuttering. All right. Isaac Moore, 1248. Hey, P. Dot and fellow fans. Well, hello, Isaac. He's one of our regulars. Isaac says we freed up some cap space going big game hunting for a wide receiver. ? Yeah, it is. And by the way, yep, YouTube is now working. That I can confirm. I just checked it. Isaac, that's a good question. There are a lot of people out there floating around various stories about possible trades. The NFL trading deadline is November 4th, which is later. The league moved it later, figuring that it might precipitate some more deals if they moved it back into November instead of in October. There are several wide receivers that have seen their names mentioned on the internet as potential trade bait. Okay? There's no question about that. They're out there. Everybody can read. We all know where the clicks are. Adai Mitchell from the Colts, Jalen Waddle from Miami, Jerry Jeudy from Cleveland, and I guess it's the Saints receiver with the Giants just played, the Ohio State receiver from the Saints. These are the guys who have all been mentioned in deals on the internet as the trade winds and the trade rumors continue to float around. I don't know. Chris Olave. All right, I drew a blank momentarily. All right, so here's the thing. To pull off a deal, not only do you have to agree on the compensation for the deal, but you also have to understand that you're going to absorb whatever the terms are on that guy's contract. Yes, if the player is traded, there is bonus money and accelerations on that stuff goes to the team that dealt him. That's true. But the rest of the terms of the deal are now yours. So you have to understand that A, are those going to be acceptable to you? B, is the player going to be one of those guys who isn't real happy with his deal and can't wait to get to a new team because he wants to either get an extension or wants to renegotiate his deal? Do you want to trade for somebody's headache? Something else you have to consider. But most of all, you have to consider what is the capital that it's going to take to make the move. That's certainly a very significant part of any of these kinds of talks. Okay, so Of those guys who we just listed, right? The guys who you've seen on the web, Olave, Judy, Mitchell, these guys that we've seen, and Waddle. Waddle and Judy both played at Alabama. We know Brian Daboll has roots with the Alabama Crimson Tide program. So he would be very familiar with those guys, if not personally, certainly through the grapevine, certainly would have all kinds of information or could get it on those guys, and would probably feel more comfortable with one of the Alabama alums than he would one of the other two players. Mitchell from Texas and Olave from Ohio State. Now, you also have to ask one of the following items. Number one, why would the player be traded? What's going on with his organization that, he's a high-quality wide receiver. Why do they want to get rid of him? Is it because their cap is a problem? Is it because they're having a philosophical problem with him? Is it because he's not a good teammate? Is it because the player is just grumbling and he's basically not fulfilling his potential? Again, do you want to take on somebody else's headache? These are the kinds of things you have to sort through. It's just not that easy. It's not like fantasy football, people. I try to tell fans this all the time. Fantasy football is exactly that. It's fantasy. It's sugar water. It's cotton candy. It's not real. In the real National Football League, there are a lot of things that you have to navigate through and digest before you can even think about one of these things happening. Now, it was reported earlier today, I believe by one of ESPN's NFL analysts, that the Giants had reconfigured the contracts of Javon Holland and Paulson Adebo. That would free up some more money for the 2025 season. Now, the Giants were kind of running out of cap room. All right? It was kind of thin going into the past couple of weeks. In fact, there have been people who've been wondering why the Giants haven't had a full complement of practice squad players, nor a full complement of 53 when they went into last week's game. They do now, by the way. And, it's simple. If you really don't think those players that you're going to add in those spots are going to provide any value to you that week, why would you spend the money? Especially when your money is short. So the Giants did the prudent thing, and they just held on to those spots. Well, now they created some extra cap room with the two defensive backs who redid their deals. So yes, it does give them some more space for this season. Whether or not that means they can maneuver with more practice squad guys bouncing back and forth, whether it means there may be a street free agent that they think they want to grab, whether it's somebody who they might want to even sign an extension with. Although when you do that, usually you try to lower your current cap number because there are ways to backload the deal. And then, of course, the other thing is, yes, if they're trying to make a trade, it would be more advantageous to have a little extra room under the cap to potentially fit in a veteran player. No question. That's absolutely one of the possibilities. But here's the question you have to ask yourself. If the Giants are going to acquire a wide receiver, you have to ask yourself, is the guy significantly better than what you have? Knowing that at the moment, you can promote a guy like little Jordan Humphrey, and he produced last week and costs you pennies on the dollar. You still have Jalen Hyatt on the roster, who's already here, and, you're not paying him a great deal of money. And he did do some stuff for you last week. You also have guys like Olszewski, who can be used as a wide receiver, and it won't cost you any extra money. Now, Bo Collins, well, we saw that he had a little bit of problems with his routes in New Orleans when he got in there late in the game, and obviously had the one drop. And I know it was not a pretty game for him, but that was also his first legitimate action as a receiver in the league. But he's there too. But then you also have, and don't forget about him, Emir Smith-Marset is on the practice squad. And we all know how terrific he was on kickoff returns last year. And he had a really good camp over the summer. I was surprised, quite honestly, when he didn't make the 53. But they were fortunate enough to get him back on the practice squad. But he played a lot of receiver during the offseason and during training camp, and he did well. So the other thing the Giants have to consider as they look for potentially another receiver, if that's what they're going to do, you got to figure out the price and the value of a guy you bring in compared to some of the guys you have in-house. They also have Dylan Cambry, who's in-house as well, I should say, in the practice squad. He's a slot guy. They just brought back Juice Wells, by the way, in the last 2 days. Juice is on the practice squad. Ole Miss receiver who was with Jaxson Dart, with the Rebels, and was a bit inconsistent during training camp. During the offseason program, he started out well, but as the weeks went by, he kind of faded off a little bit. But obviously him and Dart have a great connection, so he's on the practice squad now. So you have to wonder, are you better off with something that's there, that's very cheap and inexpensive, but guys who you know, they know the system, they know your quarterback, and they're going to be deep on the depth chart anyway? Are you better off with that? Or do you think realistically that at 2-4, you can make a run this season and at least be in the playoff chase in December? If you really believe that, then you absolutely have to consider, strongly consider, the questions that we talked about before in terms of acquiring a legitimate top-level wide receiver. Somebody like a Waddle, somebody like a Judy, or an Olave. I would favor one of those three guys over Adai Mitchell, quite frankly, because there were questions about Mitchell coming out of college. No one ever doubted his talent, but there were some less than desirable traits about him coming. He was not a full throttle blue chip can't miss prospect, although great speed for sure and a big play guy waiting to happen. I would go for the more proven players. The other three names, if I were a general manager, I would rather do due diligence and find out what's going on with those three guys. If in fact they are available, if they are on the block, what kind of trade value could they possibly command? You have to do due diligence. You have to. You have to make those phone calls or listen to those phone calls and see what materializes. But if you do that, remember this, if you do this, if you make a deal for a veteran receiver of that caliber, then that means you really believe that something's happening here. That at 2-4, you strongly believe that you're going to climb out of this hole, and there's a chance that you'll be playing very meaningful games in December. And we know how tough the Giants' schedule is. So if the Giants beat the Broncos on Sunday, they'd be 3-4 with a trip to Philadelphia on deck and a chance to be at 500 after 8 games. Wow. That's a place the Giants haven't been to very often since they won their 4th Super Bowl back in the 2011 season. That would certainly put a very different spin on the future of this year, or the prospects of this year. In fact, if the Giants knock off the Broncos, without even going to the Philadelphia game, let's just say they beat Denver. And by the way, they have a legitimate chance to beat the Broncos. They absolutely do. Don't let anybody tell you they don't, because that's just foolish to think. If the Giants play their best ball, they play their A game, they can absolutely beat the Broncos. Now, to get to that 3-4 mark with a chance to be 500 going to Philly, that just might be the impetus for someone to believe that this team has a realistic shot to write a story this year. If they lose in Denver, now they're 2-5. And even a sweep of Philly puts them at 3-5. Does that change the composition of the equation? Does a win in Denver or a loss in Denver dramatically change your desire? I'm going to make you a GM right now, folks. Okay? You guys, you're the Giants GM. Okay? I want you to hit me up on the chat. Hit me up with a phone call. Hit me up with a video call. You're the Giants GM. Does a victory or a loss in Denver change how you view the wide receiver market and your inclination to pull the trigger and to try to acquire one of those veterans? That's my question to you right now. All right. Aiden Fink says, OBJ would have made that catch on the play to Hyatt. Well, it doesn't matter, Aiden. Hyatt whipped the secondary and forced them to commit a pass interference, which became 1st and goal at the 1. So, yes, if the player makes the catch, it's a touchdown instead of 1st and goal at the 1. But all's well that ends well, because it did result in a touchdown anyway. And I'm giving Hyatt credit for forcing the defense into a very bad penalty, and a painful penalty. Scotty Young, 1669, had to shut down my internet. Something going wrong with YouTube. So it is a YouTube issue. Thank you, Scott. Mark B, 8365, says, good evening, everyone. Isaac Moore, 1248, says, how the hell are the Broncos favored 7.5? I have nothing to do with the people west of the Mississippi. Let me make that very clear. But I will say this to you. This could very easily be a game where the team that gets to 20 wins. The Broncos beat the Jets last week 13-11. 2 of the points came on a holding penalty in the end zone for a safety. Did you watch the Jets-Broncos game? Did you see it? The Jets were really bad, especially on offense. We know the Giants are a much better team than the Jets are. And yet the Broncos had to hold on for dear life and beat them 13-11. Now, I don't want to just throw that game up on the easel and say, well, Giants are better than the Jets, so therefore 13-11 is not a problem to overcome and the Giants should win. I'm not going to do that. But I'm also not going to ignore that game either. Again, I'd love to talk more about that matchup, but I want to get to your chats because you guys have had a lot to say up here on the side of the screen. Isaac Moore says all the way with the G-men. Mark B 8365. Paul, what do the Giants do to prepare for Mile High? Do they arrive a day early to try to get used to the altitude, or do anything different than usual? Mark, they have practiced as normal. They have the speakers out there, obviously, for the crowd noise, but the Giants are going to be leaving on Saturday. They will not leave on Friday. Some teams believe in leaving a day early, and they think that getting acclimated to the weather and getting acclimated to the air, as we know it's thinner, that it can be a real benefit. A lot of other teams don't do that. It basically is the kind of thing where a head coach and a GM will sit down with their training staff and their medical staff, and they'll look at the evidence, they'll talk about it, they'll hammer out, okay, are there specific facts that we know? Are there tendencies that we know? Is there proof that if you go out there on Friday, you have a better chance to win? And when they digest all of these facts, they then come up with a travel itinerary. The Giants have decided to leave on Saturday. So clearly, in their mind, they've looked at all of the available information and they've decided that leaving on Friday is not of any benefit. So they are not going to leave a day ahead of time. eFreedom 341, or no, it's at Freedom 341. Good evening, Paul. I know you touched on it, but you started talking about special teams in the summer, and it's been one of the best in the league. Go Giants. I'm glad you remembered, Freedom, because this was part of their strategy. Again, the easiest way for a team to begin climbing out of the quicksand is to try to win, if not dominate, one of the three units in a football game. The easiest one to change and the easiest one to turn the tables on is special teams. The Giants crafted this plan way back when in the springtime. They were going to dominate on special teams. Well, we mentioned it the other day, but I'm going to keep mentioning it as long as it's relevant. The Giants rank third in the NFL in holding opposing kickoff returns to 21.7 yards a game. They rank fourth in the NFL in holding opponents' punt returns to 4.7 yards per game. The coverage units have been spectacular. Giants kickoff returns, sixth in the league at 27.2 per game, or average, not per game, average per return. I kept saying per game. That's stupid. It's per return. The only place that they're not in the top 10 is on punt returns. 9.3 per punt return. That's 22nd in the league. But would anybody argue that Gunnar Olszewski is not a good punt returner? We know he is. All it's going to take is one or two big ones, and all of a sudden that average changes, and they probably jump about 8 spots. So it's not that big a deal. So the fact remains, the Giants have done exactly what they planned to do. They plan to have an outstanding special teams unit, and indeed they have done that. Let me see here. I want to look at something. If I can find it. Trying to find something here. Okay. All right. In 2025, as the season currently stands, okay, the average drive in the National Football League is 28 yards per drive. Okay? 28 yards per drive. And I mention that because if you think about it, if your opposition is starting at their own 30, that means they're getting to your 42-yard line, which means a 60-yard field goal attempt, which, if you guys know, I really got a thorn in my side for these kickers who can't help but make 60-yard field goals as if they're extra points. But that right now is what you're looking at. If the other team is starting at the 30, average drive is to your 42, and that's a 60-yard field goal. So they're already in field goal range. So what you want to do, if at all possible, is to have them start deeper than that. Now, let's see. What number do I have here that I wanted to give you guys? There was a number I wanted to give you, and I'm trying to figure out here if I could find it. Let's see here. Giants' average starting drive is their own 38-yard line. Now, we know they were 0-3 to start the season, but think about this. You're starting at your own 38, and you go 28 yards. Well, 34-yard line, the other team. That's 52-yard field goal. Not bad. So the Giants are doing what they have to do on special teams to give themselves and put themselves in position to have a much better chance to win football games. Anyway. James O'Keefe says, "Hi, Paul. Getting on YouTube was a challenge tonight, but I'm here. Let's go Giants." Well, thanks, James, for sticking with us. Trisha6401, it's a different format. Notice your whole signature available as you chat. I do believe that there has been a little bit of a change in some of the electronic gadgetry on the site. And hopefully you like it. I had nothing to do with it. It changes when it wants to. Jared Brown, 3289, says, would you rather have a third-round guy with great confidence in himself or a first-round guy lacking confidence? Well, that's easy. I take the third-round guy. The third-round guy who has great confidence has upside. The first-round guy who doesn't probably does not have upside. And remember, in theory, your top 3 picks should be able to be significant producers. If not starters, they darn well better be heavy rotational players. So, yeah, I'm definitely taking the third-round guy with great confidence, Jared. No question about that. Isaac Moore, 1248, says, I want Olave. So he's not as much on the other guys. He wants Olave from the Saints. Scott Young, 1669. I always remembered Gary Reason's big hit in Denver. We all do, in the snow. That goal line hit, which was a helmet-to-helmet hit, would draw a penalty today. The rules were obviously tightened to enhance safety in recent years. So the Reason's hit would never have been allowed back then had the rules been in place. That photograph of Reason's launching himself and being in midair actually was selected as the photograph of the year by the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So it is a very famous, iconic photograph, not quite as iconic as the 1964 shot of Y.A. Tittle on his knees, bleeding from his head, with a busted helmet on the ground against the Pittsburgh Steelers. That is a more iconic NFL photo. But the Reasons hit is right up there in the Pro Football Hall of Fame library. Shiny Eye Official. That stadium the Giants currently play in will always be Giants Stadium to me. I don't care how much money some corporation pays to stick their name on it. Okay. And that's fine. You certainly can feel however you want about a building and call it what you prefer, right? You have the right as a fan to call any building what you want to call it. Because when you communicate with somebody and you tell them X building, you want those people to know the building you're talking about. So if you're talking to your friends, although I suspect everybody in the area knows that Giants Stadium was in East Rutherford, and they know that MetLife Stadium is the new building in East Rutherford, I don't think in this particular case it would be much of an issue. But certainly back in the day, if you told your friends the Giants are going to California and they're playing at 3Com Park, they would look at you like, what? 3Com Park in California? What team are they playing? That was always my opinion. I feel like the most important thing you could do when you're communicating with people and broadcasting a game is to let people know stuff that they're familiar with. If you're not going to talk in that kind of language that they can understand and they can translate, then what are you doing? 3Com Park. Nope. Gabagoo God 69. We want Waddle. Okay, I understand. James O'Keefe says the Gary Reasons hit was awesome. One of the best defensive plays for Giants all time. I don't think anybody would argue. Let's see what else we have here. Scotty Young, 1669. I do have concerns about Jaxson Dart being able to deal with Denver's pass rush. He better do his homework. All right. This is a good chance to talk about Denver's pass rush. Guys, I know you got more chats. I'm going to get to you in a minute. Again, if you want to make a phone call, I'd love to take a call or a video call as well. Let's talk about Denver's pass rush for a second, though. You brought it up, Scott. This is as good a time as any. Okay? Last week, the Broncos became the first team with at least 9 sacks and allowing less than 100 total yards in a game since Buffalo stopped the Jets in 2021. The 9 sacks by the Broncos last week were the most in an NFL game since the opener 1996 Denver against the Jets. Most sacks in a game by Denver, was 1996 against the Jets. We know Nick Bonito leads the NFL with 8 sacks. Zach Allen, his teammate, and Bonito each have 16 quarterback hits. That ties for the NFL lead. Now, just to understand in context, Brian Burns of the Giants is 3rd in the NFL with 7 sacks. He is tied for 8th in the NFL with 11 quarterback hits. So Benito's numbers are a little bit better than Brian Burns. And we all know if you've watched Brian Burns play in and play out, he has played at an all NFL caliber of play. He's been sensational. He looks like an absolute all-star in every respect. Well, that's what Bonito is as well. And I should mention, just on the tackle chart, Burns has 30 tackles and Bonito has 23. Tackles for a loss. Burns tied for 2nd in the league with 9. Bonito tied for 5th in the league with 7. One huge difference, passes defensed. Brian Burns has knocked down 3. Bonito has not knocked down any. We're talking about 2 Pro Bowl caliber players. Okay? That's just forget Pro Bowl, all pro, all NFL caliber players. The 30 sacks through 6 games by Denver ties the 2013 Kansas City Chiefs for the most in the first 6 games of a season since 1990. For only the 3rd time since 1990, an NFL team has had 5 or more sacks in at least 4 of their first 6 games. The Broncos lead the NFL in quarterback hurries with 79. They also lead, they are 7th. I got to read my own scribble. They are 7th in the NFL in quarterback hurries with 79, and they lead the NFL in quarterback knockdowns with 54. They are very dangerous in the passing game because of a few reasons. Number one, they have a terrific secondary. Patrick Surtain, who was a guy I salivated for in the draft and wound up going to Denver, tied for 5th in the NFL with 7 pass breakups. He is an outstanding player with great cover skills, size, length, physicality, and moves as if he was a slot corner. His agility, his quickness, everything about him belies his size. But he's got the size to go with those coverage skills. Makes him incredibly, incredibly difficult to beat. But the other guy back there who has become a huge problem for opponents is Hufanga, the former San Francisco 49ers safety. Now, Hufanga is technically listed as a strong safety, but he plays everywhere for them. For those of you who might remember Pittsburgh Steelers safety Troy Polamalu, you will see Hufanga line up at linebacker, at outside linebacker, up on the line of scrimmage, playing deep as a safety, playing as a single high, playing in a zone. He's all over the field. They will put him in any spot they want to. He might even come up right in the A-gap, right up to the line of scrimmage. They're not afraid to put him in coverage. They're not afraid to put him in man or zone. They're not afraid to put him on the blitz. Personally speaking, I think Hufanga causes a lot more problems for quarterbacks than Surtain does, because Surtain will lock down your number one receiver. Well, the Giants' number one receiver is Malik Neighbors. He's not playing in the game. So if the Broncos want to put Patrick Surtain, who does not play the slot, on the boundary and lock him down on little Jordan Humphrey or Jalen Hyatt or Bo Collins, well, go ahead and be my guest, because he's a lockdown corner, and if you want to put him on one of those guys and you want to take them out of the game, well, that's fine, because taking one of those guys out of the Giants' offense is not going to make the difference between winning and losing. You take out a Malik Neighbors, that could make the difference between winning and losing a game. You take out a Hyatt, a Collins, or a Humphrey, and that's kind of a waste of resources, at least as I see it. So Surtain, to me, is not the most significant player in the Broncos secondary this week in this matchup. It is Hufanga, who is going to be all over the place, taking different roles in practically every play and trying to cause confusion for Jaxson Dart. All right, let's get that out of the way. 12 different players on this Broncos team have at least a share of 1 sack. Why is that? Because their scheme is ridiculous. Let me explain. The Broncos, They are not going to blitz an awful lot. Okay? That's not their game. They play a lot of man-to-man. An awful lot of man-to-man. Now, here's what's interesting about it. They have given up 5 pass plays of at least 40 yards this season, which is tied for third most in the NFL. Think about that for a second. 5 in 6 games. Now, I'm sure Sean Payton's not very happy about that, but that's because they play a lot of man-to-man defense. And if you've ever listened to me on any program, whether it's this one or Big Blue Kickoff Live, what you know is that every single Sunday, the defense is going to have at least a handful of plays where if your offense was able to execute and hit them, they would be huge plays in the game. Because no defense in this league is going to go through a game 100% locking down on every single play. There are going to be opportunities during the game. They may not be a lot, but there will be opportunities for the Giants to hit a big play. Now, do you catch them at the right time? Because when that big play opportunity comes, did your receiver run the right route? Did your quarterback have the time to find him? Because your O-line had to protect. Then when your quarterback finds him, did he make a good enough throw so that your guy could make the catch? These are things that have to fall in line. Your timing on this, on the execution, has to be when the defense allows the play. All right. Now, here's what I want to think that I want to give you guys a stat. Another one of the really cool stats that we talk about over the course of time. Oh, let's see here. I got a stat that I really want to give you. And let's see. I just got to make sure I got it. I have so many different pages and so many different charts and everything logged on my laptop. It's insane. This is what happens when you don't do pen and paper like I used to do for years. You start using a computer, and all of a sudden, everything gets very complicated. That's just the way it is. Oh, my goodness. Let's see here. All right. While I continue to look up what I wanted to look up for you guys. Oh, my goodness. This is killing me. I can't find exactly what it was I wanted to check on for you. Hold on a second here. Maybe I got it now. Here it is. Here it is. I finally got what I wanted. Denver Broncos are only blitzing 28% of the time. That's not a great deal. Now, the league has been backing down a lot. Most blitzes, percentage-wise, the Atlanta Falcons are up at 40%. You remember, I believe, 1 year under Wink Martindale, the Giants blitzed 42% of the time. That gives you an idea in context of what we're talking about. Broncos are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They're listed as 8th in terms of blitz frequency at 28%. Giants are at 26%. They are 10th. Okay? So they're blitzing a tad more than the Giants. But here's what I want to talk to you about. That's not a really high percentage, but again, in context, based on what's going on in the league these days, it's a little bit higher, but it's not that high. What the Broncos do a lot of is that they will change the guys who blitz. In other words, if you want to say they zone blitz, you could say that. Because what they'll do is they'll run 4, 5, 6, 7 guys up on the line. They'll only send 4. and they'll back the other guys out. Most of their rushes will be only 4 guys. But for example, and Bud Carson, the old Pittsburgh Steelers defensive coordinator, was one of the guys who loved doing this. The zone blitz, right? What does that mean? It means you have more than 4 guys standing on the line of scrimmage, right? And it doesn't matter who is coming. It's all about how many guys are coming. So, for example, you might see Hufanga come up to the line of scrimmage. There could be 3 down linemen, right? And a linebacker and Hufanga. 5 guys up on the line of scrimmage. But only 4 of them are going to rush the passer. 1 of them drops out. Well, on one play, it might be the linebacker. On another play, it might be Hufanga. On another play, they might have 7 guys up on the line. 1 of the linebackers is going to rush. 2 of the defensive linemen are going to rush, and they're going to send a corner. So they're only sending 4 guys, but they've got 7 at the line, and they're showing you a major league pressure package. And Jaxson Dart's got to call out signals. He's got to make adjustments. He's got to figure out which of the 4 are coming after me. And of course, your center. In this case, Adam Schlotman, the backup center, is going to be playing in all likelihood with John Michael Schmidt still in concussion protocol. So, you see the problem? That's what the Broncos do. They specialize in picking different groups of 4 on a consistent basis. They're constantly changing the 4 guys who are going to come after the quarterback. It could be the inside backer, the outside backer, one of the defensive linemen, the corner, the safety, the slot corner. They're constantly changing the group of 4 that's going after the QB. Schematically, it is a huge, huge headache for the quarterback and for the center to try to deal with the guys who are going to be going after the QB. We talk all the time about multiple schemes, right? Multiple formations. Well, this is multiple pressure packages to the nth degree. That's how you get 12 different guys on the team having at least a share of a sack. Because you're constantly mixing and matching the 4 guys who are going after the QB. And sometimes they are going to send 5. Sometimes they're even going to send 6. The point is, you're constantly playing a guessing game as to which guys are coming after the QB, which guys are rushing the passer, and which guys are dropping out. That's the key to the Denver Broncos pass rush. I hope you guys understand that. But that's the key. Now, what they don't do well, we talked about giving up 5 plays, pass plays of 40-plus yards this year. Again, tied for 3rd most in the league. What they also don't do very well, and they did it last week against the Jets because the Jets didn't know how to take advantage of it, their linebackers do not do very well in pass coverage. Now, why is that? Well, because Benito's very busy rushing the quarterback. And Jonathan Cooper, their other outside linebacker, is very busy rushing the quarterback. And because of that, a lot of times Alex Singleton, who is on the inside, is forced to pick up man coverage. Well, this year, Quarterbacks are 25 of 32 completes, 25 completes on 32 attempts for 340 yards and 2 touchdowns when isolating a player against Alex Singleton. The 340 passing yards allowed by Singleton this year is the second highest passing yardage figure allowed by any NFL linebacker. That is an Achilles. It's almost impossible to say a defense is airtight. There are going to be chinks in the armor, dents in the armor, if you will. It is the Denver linebackers' pass coverage. That is a dent in the armor. Now, they didn't have any problem against the Jets because the Jets couldn't exploit it and didn't exploit it. But that's what you want to do. That's what you want to do against Denver. Use quick passes. Use your running backs to isolate against the linebackers. Your tight end against the linebackers. Use a lot of double tight ends for sure. And see what you can do about running the ball. That's obvious. Quick slants. Try to get Wan'Dale Robinson off the line of scrimmage against their slot corner, McMillan. When throwing at McMillan, teams are 12 of 19 for 126 yards. He only has 1 pass breakup. So yeah. It's the top-rated defense in the league right now on the whole. They've only allowed 27% on third down conversions. They've only given up 254 yards a game. That's second best in the league. First best in the league in terms of third down conversions. Second best in the league in terms of allowing points. Only 16 a game. They lost on last-second field goals to the Colts and the Chargers in weeks 2 and 3. Yeah, this is a very, very good defense. And Sean Payton knows he's got a terrific defense. So he's not afraid to take the game into the mud. Make it a slow down, slobber knocker, demolition derby, battle royal, tug of war. If you can get to 20 points, you win. He's not afraid to have that kind of game because he's got the kind of defense that can do that. Because if you're going to attack the linebackers in pass coverage, chances are it's going to take you a lot of plays to work your way down the field to try to get yourself into scoring position. And then, of course, when things tighten up in the red zone, oh boy, that's another story entirely. So it's going to be really hard, right, to score points against them unless you're able to hit 1 or 2 of those big plays when they show themselves. Anyway, Scott, I am so glad you gave me the opportunity to talk about this Broncos defense because they are terrific. They are. But they can be, what's the word I'm looking for? You can do some things against them. As I said, there are dents in the armor. You just have to put yourself in position to attack them. You know, if you don't run the ball well with your double tight ends and your power sets, your heavy sets, now you're constantly in long to go situations, which then puts you into the jaws of the Broncos defense. Because now you have to beat man coverage on a consistent basis. Now you have to consistently hold up in your pass protection time after time after time. And now the Broncos know you're going to be throwing the football. And you're going to say to me, well, Paul, isn't that always the way it is? No, that's not always the way it is. It depends on the matchup. It depends on the strengths and weaknesses of the team you're playing. Yes, there are certain fundamentals in Football 101 that you always want to go by. But then based on the opponent that you're playing and the strengths and weaknesses of the matchup, you have to be able to tweak your philosophies based on that Sunday's game. And it's clear. It's clear. You have to run the ball well with heavy formations early in the downs and then be able to nickel and dime your way down the field and maybe hit a big play or two when it's there. That's what you want to do. And they want to play a tug-of-war game. Play the tug-of-war game with them. They're averaging 22 points a game offensively, well, scoring. And that's tied for 21st in the league. In the last 3 games, actually, let me do this. In the last 5 games, the Giants have scored 37 points, 9, 21, 14, and 34. Talk about Jekyll and Hyde, right? That's what the Giants' offense has been. Jekyll and Hyde. But are they capable of scoring 22 points if you just want to go by the Broncos' average? Well, they've done it twice this year, and another time they scored 21 against the LA Chargers, who certainly have a terrific defense. So I don't think it's out of the question that the Giants can play a tug-of-war game with the Broncos and play a very tight one-score game that might very well come down to a field goal in the fourth quarter. I don't think that's out of the question at all. Because everything the Broncos do is based on that philosophy of their defense. They get the game into a slow-down crawl, put their defense in control of the narrative and the tempo, and then their offense does not have to do very much. That's why Bo Nix, who's incredibly smart, you guys know if you listen to me at all last year, I was a huge Bo Nix fan coming out of the draft. Big-time Bo Nix fan, and still am. Bo Nix is a very smart, intelligent, poised quarterback who doesn't make mistakes. He won't be himself. And if you want to get into a tug-of-war kind of game, that's fine with him. Because he'll play in clean, fundamentally sound football and just do enough to beat you. He doesn't have to put the game on his shoulders. All right. Chris Spires says, what do you think? Waddle. There's another vote for Waddle. Shinny Eye Official says, YouTube has been on off for the last hour. I had to click 10 times on this link to watch your show. I apologize for that. I have nothing to do with YouTube. James O'Keefe says, need to get the tight ends involved early and often versus the Broncos. I love what the Giants did against New Orleans in the first half when they went with the double tight end package. The heavy package that they used, and this was rather interesting. I'd like to see them forcefully run the ball out of that heavy package because I think they can. But here's what's interesting. They used pass plays on 9 of their first 10 first down opportunities to keep the Saints off balance in the first half of that game in New Orleans. And it worked extremely well. It was the short passing game, but it was the passing game. That's a variation. I still would rather pound it and run it, but if they want to use short pass, they want to pull out some of the plays they used against New Orleans, by all means do it. Jared Brown, 3-2-8-9. If the compensation is similar for Waddle and Olave, I'd much rather have Waddle. I'm very concerned about Olave's injury history. One more concussion, he's not in the league. Understood. Gabagoo God, 69. Any wide receiver looks good with Dart, and I think some of the headaches could clear with a new bright star-studded offense. Chris Spires says, would rather draft a first-round wide receiver. Well, there you go. You know, I do think the Giants are going to be in the market for another receiver. If not this year, certainly in the springtime. Scott says, Scott Young, 1669, regardless if the Giants were to trade for a receiver, it would take that man weeks to get acclimated to this offense. And that is absolutely part of the issue. Scott says, I understand it's a very difficult offense to understand. Isaac Moore, 1248, also says they signed Juice Wells to the practice squad. We mentioned that before. Chris Spires says, those not get open constant. I'm not quite sure what that is all about. Scott Young, 1669. Unknown stars develop every year. Give Juice Wells an opportunity. He's played with Jaxson Dart. Maybe some continuity there. Mark B, 8365. Hyatt played hard last game. Made a difficult catch and got a PI. Looking for a big play this Sunday. Want him to succeed so bad. Understood. Trisha 6401, the A-team, she says. I'm not sure exactly what that's about. Isaac Moore, 1248, says, we're not losing to Denver. That'd be great. He says, I'm going all in now. Trisha 6401, Hyatt getting the glue back on his hands. He is our New York Giants cheetah. Mikey C483, when the G-men get to the bye week, there'll be a game under or over, I think he means 500. Go Big Blue. Well, that's the idea, Mikey, is that the Giants hoover right around the 500 mark all the way into December. That's the idea. The Big Moo, as a stopgap, why don't we just grab Isaiah Hodgins off of the Pittsburgh practice squad? He knows the offense. He won't be expensive. Isaiah Hodgins had an awful lot of trouble getting open in his second year in the league. Remember, when he was in his first year with the Giants, he had been with Buffalo prior. First year with the Giants, that half a season in 2022, second half of the year, he was terrific. People really didn't know about him. He was kind of a wild card. He surprised and shocked a lot of people. But they got film on him. The following season, he virtually disappeared in the offense because he couldn't get open. People knew about him. Scott Young, 1669. If I were to GM, my goal for this season would be to try to win as many games as possible. If I have an opportunity to get a top receiver without breaking the bank, I would go for it. Understood. Aiden Fink says, I think you still trade for a wide receiver. Paul, who would you like to see the Giants make a deal for, and what's the most you'd give up? Again, hypotheticals of that nature are virtually impossible to discuss. Number one, because, again, you don't know how much the other teams are looking for, and you also don't know a lot of things about those players. Like I said, the Alabama guys, the two Alabama alums, if I'm the GM, if I'm looking at the trade market and I hear that wide receivers are being bandied about, I'm going to go back to the Alabama alums. Okay? I know the Alabama program. I know my coach knows the Alabama program. And those guys are taught a lot about pro football. And they also have accomplished resumes in this league. So if it were me and I were in charge of a NFL franchise right now looking for a wide receiver, I would probably look for Judy or Waddle as opposed to the other guys. How much would I be willing to pay? again, what are some of the financials that would be involved? And it might not even just be about their contracts. It might also be, if those guys get traded, are they going to cry and moan about the deal they have? And are they going to come to me asking for a different deal? So there's got to be some more information in this hypothetical. I would be very hesitant to give up more than a 4th round draft choice in any hypothetical deal. 3 is a little rich for me, regardless of who we're talking about. Aiden says trade for a wide receiver regardless of this week's outcome. That's interesting. Isaac Moore, 1248, says Olave is still cheap on his rookie deal through 2026. Yeah, but again, he's got health issues. We know about the concussions. That's been mentioned before. And now you also have to wonder, if he gets the trade, does he come crying about, well, you know what? Yeah, I'll come to your team. I get it, but by the way, I want to redo my deal. You know, remember when they made the deal for Brian Burns during the offseason before last year, they got permission from Carolina to talk to Burns. They worked out a new contract extension, something they thought they could live with, and then they made the trade with Carolina. Because you got to get that, you got to know what the player's thinking and what the player's going to want before he gets into your building. You don't want to trade for a headache. Isaac Moore, 1248, says, that's my target, guys. Again, I'm not sure exactly where he's going. The Focus, one of our regulars. As GM of the New York Giants that has been down way too long, you don't wait until the offseason to make major improvements. You make them as soon as you can. We need to see immediate improvements or chemistry. Leo Luca Rendizzi says, I'm hearing Waddle to the Giants before Sunday. Focus says, I like Little Jordan personally. He has the traits of a receiver we have needed for a long time now. You can literally toss him up at times and he will attack the ball. Leo Luca Rendizzi says, I keep hearing how tough Denver will be. Did people not see the Denver at Jets game in London? Both teams look bad. Luca, I told you all about it. All right? I have great respect not only for the defense, but of Bo Nix. We know that Cortland Sutton has had a really strong year. He's averaging over 14 yards a catch. Evan Ingram had a really nice game, 5 grabs for 42 yards against the Jets last week. Looks like they really want to get him involved more in the offense. We also know that J.K. Dobbins is a very forceful, powerful running back. Always has been in this league. He's averaging about 5 yards a carry, which is nothing to sneeze at. He's 7th in the NFL at over 440 yards on the season. He's rushed for 4 touchdowns. He's got a 100-yard game this year against Cincinnati. He's legit. Okay? He's legit. And if you he pushes the pile. He gets yards after contact. He's one of the better running backs in the league at doing that. See, when he gets the ball on first down, if he turns a 3-yard gain into a 5-yard gain because he pushes the pile 2 yards, it changes everything for the Broncos. Because instead of 2nd and 7, they now have 2nd and 5. That changes the chapter in the playbook that Sean Payton's going to go to for Bo Nix. It allows them to play a much more conservative, control the tempo and the narrative kind of game. You don't want that. You want Nix, who is smart and patient and fundamentally sound. You want Bo Nix to take chances. You want Bo Nix to have to take a risk. That's not in his DNA. You need to put him in that spot. So you want him in 2nd and 7. And then if they try Dobbins again, you want to stop that play. So now it's 3rd and 7. You want Bo Nix to have to play from behind. Yeah, The last thing in the world you want is for the for the Broncos to control the narrative of this game, both offensively and defensively. If they do that, okay, if they do that, then you have to be able to control the narrative on the other side of the ball, offensively and defensively too, to try to get them into a stalemate. And that's really, really difficult because of the kind of slow down, tortoise type game they want to play. But you can win a game like that, because if it's going to be a slow down game with very few possessions, it will probably come down to a field goal in the final minutes. And maybe the last team with the ball wins. Just don't make mistakes. And by the way, did I forget to tell you folks, this was something that really ticked me off when I went through my research earlier in the week. The Broncos and the Giants are both in the top 5 in the NFL in drawing penalty flags. The Giants have drawn 62 flags this year, tied for second in the league. Now, they've only been marked off 49 times, but 62 flags have been thrown against them. 60 flags have been thrown against the Denver Broncos. That's tied for 4th most in the league. So you have the top 5, 2 of the top 5 most penalty-riddled teams playing on Sunday. Do you think the officials are going to have a laundry fest? That could very easily wind up being a difference in this kind of game. That's slowed down, dragged across the mud, low scoring, comes down to a field goal. Maybe the last team that touches the ball wins. Well, with 2 teams that attract penalty flags like magnets, the officials might have a really big say in the outcome of this game. I'm so glad you made me bring this up, Leo Luca. Thank you. Let's see. 2 giant goofballs. What's up, everybody? Yeah, how are you, my man? Thanks for coming back. Trisha 6401. Are we trading for a wide receiver? Well, again, Trisha, the rumor mill is hot right now. Todd Haley, we all know, his coaching resume in the NFL. He was on Sirius NFL XM radio earlier today. He said he's been hearing that the over-under on the amount of trades before the deadline is going to be 12. A dozen trades in the NFL by the November 4th deadline. That's a lot. And the hot position that everybody's talking about is wide receiver. So could it happen? Yeah, it could happen. I'm not saying it won't. But as we talked about earlier in the program, there's a lot of stuff you've got to sort through. You got to rake a lot of leaves before you get to that grass and figure out what it is you're going to do. Trisha 6401 says our quarterback has elite coaching. Okay, let's see. What do we have here? The focus. I'm surprised that Gunnar has not earned some offensive playing time. I think he showed some flashes in the preseason, and you are correct. He certainly did. The New York Giants should be curious to see if it translates into the regular season. He is a slot guy, really, more so than anything else. You have a slot guy in Wan'Dale Robinson. Now, of course, without Neighbors in there, Robinson has taken some snaps on the boundary, which means, in theory, you could certainly get Gunnar some snaps. Gunnar did get some boundary snaps during training camp, too. He actually had a terrific camp. Remember, Smith-Marsette got hurt. They signed Gunnar for training camp because he knew the system, and they wanted someone who could actually run the plays. Gunnar wouldn't drop anything. He just kept catching every ball that was thrown near him. He played so well. They had to keep him. he really earned his way onto the team this year. That was a tremendous job by him. MB Goblin, I'd rather Dable than being a team like the Jets, Browns, Bears, or Titans that roll through coaches like a merry-go-round. Yeah, there's a little bit of conversation here in the chat about Brian Dable. It would take me reading about 20 of these gives and takes to fulfill this story here so that it would make sense for you guys. I'm just not going to go there. Let's see if we could just skip all of this. You guys could talk amongst yourselves on that one. Oh, let's see here. Is there anybody else here who's on this? Let's see here. Freedom, 341. I think Theo needs to step up. If not, Belly doesn't drop anything. Go Big Blue. Theo Johnson. Yep. Theo Johnson and Daniel Bellinger, the Giants' 2 tight ends. Let me just take a look at my stat sheet here. Let me see here. According to my stat chart, Theo Johnson, so far this year, has 3 drop passes, and 2 of them were on 3rd down. And only 1 of them was a first down throw. Just FYI. And Daniel Bellinger has yet to drop a pass this season. But of course, in terms of their overall numbers, Johnson catching 17 for 126 and 3 touchdowns. Bellinger with 7 receptions for 85 yards and no touchdowns. Trisha6401 says, if I'm going to be like, yeah, wide receiver, she would like Waddle. Isaac Moore says, I'd be okay with a deal with Olave next year, finish out this year first. Again, he does have concussion history. Just don't forget that. Nahama Menzai Sai. I'm sorry if I got that wrong. I'm a little tired. I'm not great on pronunciations right now. 8137 says, why not trade Tay Banks for A.D. Mitchell? Young, talented, healthy scratch who's on a rookie contract. And we have corralled Flott. And we can get a cornerback in the first next year. I think that would be a terrible mistake because I think that Tay Banks still has tremendous value to this team and upside. And first-round corners who have the skill set he has are much more valuable and much more harder to come by than wide receivers. Sean Jackson, 3203, one of our regulars. Good evening, Paul. Hope you get a well-deserved rest after all your extra work last week during the Giants' shortened week. It was a brutal week, no doubt. Those Thursday games really compact everything. Can the Giants play great games consistently? Want Theo Johnson to raise his play? Don't know about the consistency part, but they certainly played the way I thought they were capable of against the Chargers and against the Eagles. Consequently, they won both of those games. Not a surprise. Isaac Moore, 1248. Garrett Wilson is already too rich. MB Goblin. Any wide receiver worth trading for is going to be too rich for us, whether cap or draft capital. And again, MB Goblin, I've talked about that very concept before. There is a possibility that that's true. He says, I don't know why we force it. Jackson is starting to gel with what we have. Not worth messing with that, in my opinion. I can absolutely understand that. MB Goblin, that's why I'm not going to freak out. If the Giants don't make a deal for a wide receiver, I don't think that's terrible either. And again, we'll never know what kind of conversations they may or may not have about one and what the potential deals may or may not have been. But if they don't see a deal to their liking, they're not going to do one, and you can't blame them, even though we won't know the specifics. Sean Jackson, 3203. Any chance Russ gets a package or two as payback for his fallout with Denver and Sean Payton? I doubt it. Unless Jaxson Dart gets hurt, I don't think you'll see Russell Wilson. Mike says, Daboll has to be evaluated based on Dart and this team this year. Well, that's exactly what it's come down to right now. There's no question about that. All right, it is now over 90 minutes into the program. Folks, I tell you what, I'll stay till 45 after. We'll go another 10 minutes. We got about 600 live views on the show right now. I would love to see us get up to 600 before I sign off tonight. That would be pretty awesome. So if you know any friends who are just hanging out on the internet, give them a shout. Tell them to come on over. Maybe give us a couple of questions or comments to go through. MB Goblin says, Paul, what do you think it will take for Banks to re-enter the CB2 role? I think he is in his head right now and just keeps making mental mistakes. That's what's holding him back, the darn head. Well, right now, he's actually done a pretty good job on kickoff returns. Let's see here. He's averaging 32 plus per kickoff return on 4 returns this season. He's certainly done a nice job. I think right now, Cordell Flott has played so well. Remember, it was kind of a mix match thing at the start of the season. And as I always felt, they were trying to put a fire under Banks. It looked like it was working pretty well. And then Banks went and got hurt. From the second he got hurt, that allowed Cordell Flott to then seize the opportunity, and seize it he did. Flott has really done a terrific job. He's playing the best ball of his career. And if you watch the interception against Philadelphia last week, that was a masterful play of anticipation and of ball hawking skills. That was really, really fun to watch. And so I don't think Flott's going to give that job up anytime soon. I just don't. But again, that doesn't mean that you discard Banks. That doesn't make sense. Chester Lewis says, hey, Paul, let the Dart attack loose and scatter boom on the Broncos. Let's go Giants. Nothing wrong with that. Mark B, 8365 said, heard Banks had twins. Congratulations. Well, again, we don't talk about personal issues with players here. He was excused for personal reasons today, and we're just going to leave it at that. MB Goblin says, don't mean it to sound like I'm not stoked for Flott. Just hurts having a first-round corner be a special teams guy. MB Goblin, I understand that. Believe me, I do understand that. But the skill set with Banks, it's too much to give up on in only his 3rd NFL season. It just doesn't make sense. And besides, Cordell Flott, I'm almost positive, I'm going to have to look this up now, but I'm almost positive that Flott is a free agent at the end of the year. Okay? So, you know you've got Banks for another year under contract. Let's see here. Just checking on Flott's contract situation. I'm almost sure of it that he's a free agent at the end of this season. Yeah, he is. He is. And the way he's playing right now, he's going to get a big raise. So, you want Tay Banks to be here. Believe me. Isaac Moore, 1248. Don't worry if Olave goes into the blue tent. Daboll will get him out of there. Oh, boy. Mark B, 8365. Need Banks for depth. Absolutely. Absolutely. You always need depth at corner. That's a mandatory in this league. Without question. And again, Flott's contract is up at the end of this season. You are going to need Tay Banks going into 2026. If for no other reason, he may be the only corner you have there. You don't know for sure if Flott's going to resign. You don't know for sure what the market's going to be if you can go get another corner. You don't know how much that other corner will cost. Remember, Banks is under his rookie contract. So you have economic certainty with Tay Banks, which is the other reason why you absolutely don't want to get rid of him. Let me see what his number is, just for argument's sake. Next year, Tay Banks' cap number is $4.3 million. I mean, are you kidding me? That's great value. It doesn't make sense not to have him around next season. He might wind up being your starting corner again. Trisha 6401. Not our first round picks, obviously, best of the heap. I think she's talking about potentially a deal with a wide receiver. Chester Lewis says, Cam Skattebo, at least this past week, seems like Bavaro's tenacity with Shockey's attitude. I've been telling people that he's got the Brandon Jacobs factor going for him. Reminds me a lot of what Brandon Jacobs brought to the table in terms of his forcefulness, his energy, the impact that he has on the team, the way that he loves contact, the way that he constantly pushes the pile. There's a lot of Brandon Jacobs in Cam Skattebo. And probably also a mixture of Madison Hedgecock, who was ultra, and I mean ultra focused when he got into a game. He never said much. He just dished out punishment. So I think there's some of the Madison Hedgecock in there too. And to be honest with you, I've had other people mention Rob Carpenter to me. Now, Carpenter came to the Giants as a bit of a tweener at running back in a deal midway through the 81 season in a trade with the Houston Oilers at the time. Carpenter was a little shorter, stout, thick, wore these huge thigh pads on his legs. He wasn't big enough to be a fullback, and he wasn't really quick enough to be a halfback. But for the Giants, he was their running game. From the moment they acquired him, he was their running game. He gave them the ability to be a balanced attack. He gave them the ability to run a 4-minute offense and grind out the clock, which is what he did in Philadelphia when the Giants upset the Eagles in the 1981 wildcard game. It was Carpenter who grinded out the yardage at the end of the game and prevented the Eagles from finishing off a comeback that would have hurt the Giants immeasurably. But they held on and won that game. And Carpenter was the guy who put the nail in the coffin. So, I could appreciate the comparison to Carpenter because the role that Skattebo was serving does also kind of fill the Carpenter role. Carpenter was a competent receiver out of the backfield too. Now, he did not have the elusiveness or the athleticism of a Cam Skattebo, and by another token, Skattebo doesn't have the size of a Brandon Jacobs or a Madison Hedgecock. But we're talking about styles and elements that these guys brought to their respective teams, and I can certainly understand those conversations. We'll go a little bit longer here. Isaac Moore, 1248. What's the O-line looking like? Any rotation? No, I don't think there's going to be a rotation. I think they're going to keep the same 5, although Schlotman's going to have to be probably the center with JMS in the concussion protocol. We are, by the way, over 300 live views right now as we approach the 145 mark. Chester Lewis, this past week's Skattebo looked like a cross between Bavaro's tenacity mixed with Shockey's attitude. He says it again. MB Goblin, I'm going to really enjoy seeing the backfield with a fully healthy Tracy and Skattebo, the modern-day Bradshaw and Jacobs, baby. Okay. By the way, Tracy and Skattebo are both very valuable coming out of the backfield to catch passes. Why do I mention that? Because we told you earlier in this program that the big bruise in that Denver Broncos defense is their linebackers' pass coverage. You want to isolate a Tracy or a Skattebo against those linebackers, you're going to get yardage. You're going to make positive plays. That's one of the very, very important things that any offensive coordinator has to do against this particular Broncos defense. I can't speak to why the Jets didn't do what they needed to do last week. That's not my problem. But I would think that when you look at the tape, that's what you want to do. You definitely want to take advantage of those linebackers. Ken Casimir 8471. Good morning from the Philippines. It looks like the special teams play is doing well. That is right, Ken. There's no question about it. Mark B 8365. Hats off to Carmen Brasillo, assistant coach in the offensive line. JMS showed improvement. Yes, he did in the Eagles game. Hope he's back soon. I'm sure everybody feels that way. Sean Jackson 3203 says, Paul, what's Slayton and JMS playing status as we inch closer to Sunday? JMS is in concussion protocol. Brian Dable does not give out what stages of the protocol that he's in. There are 4 different stages. You got to clear all 4 before you can get cleared by the league to get back out in a game. So it's already Wednesday night. I would seriously doubt that JMS is going to get clearance. Darius Slayton, if you missed it earlier in the program, it's got the sore hamstring, forced him to miss the Philadelphia game. This was the first real practice of the week for the Giants as they prep for the Broncos. He was on the side with the trainers all throughout the practice, working on his hammy. They were limbering him up. They were stretching it out. He did not take any practice reps. That's why he's listed as a did not participate. I'd say his chances of getting into this game are probably very, very slim, but it is only Wednesday. Isaac Moore 1248 says motor definitely lost a gear or 2. That would be Devin Singletary. The Giants right now, 3rd string running back behind Skattebo and Tracy. Singletary's been in this league, I want to say 7 years, maybe 8 now. He is a pro's pro and a steady, productive, competent NFL running back. No, he's not going to break off a 50-yard touchdown, but that's never really been his game anyway. You know, he doesn't have that second gear. He doesn't have that breakaway speed. He didn't have it when he came into the league. He's certainly not going to have it now. Mark B 8365. Great show as always. Thanks and appreciate all you do, Paul. Mark, thank you so much for sticking with us once again, coming back for another Wednesday night program here on the Big Blue Kickoff Live. We've only got 10 minutes to make it a full 2-hour show, so I'm going to do that. Why not? Let's do it. If you guys want to keep me here, we will go and make it a full 2-hour show. There are people on the West Coast who are probably, maybe either getting their dinner, picking it up, ordering out, maybe still making it. I don't know. Does anybody have like a laptop in their kitchen while they're making dinner and like watch stuff? You know, a lot of people have TVs in their kitchen, I know, but do they have computers in their kitchen and watch shows that are on the computer? Probably not. I wouldn't think so. But Mark B 8365 says, let's go. Yeah, let's do it, man. Let's do it. All right. While we have a moment, until I get a few more comments here, I did say I would take it to the top of the hour, so we will make this a full 2-hour show. I want to go over a couple of other numbers and stats and facts and figures. Jaxson Dart and Patrick Mahomes are the only quarterbacks to lead their team to an opening drive touchdown each of their first three starts. Mahomes did it with the Chiefs. Dart did it with the Giants. And they're the only 2 to do that in the NFL since the 1991 season. How about that? It's the first time the Giants have had 3 straight opening drive touchdowns since weeks 3, 4, and 5 in the 2009 season. Funny thing, Jaxson Dart had a presser today on Wednesday. The starting quarterback always talks to the media. And he was asked about that. And he said, when he was at USC and Ole Miss with head coach Lane Kiffin, Kiffin always wanted his team to get the ball first because he thought it was important to get the opening kickoff and score on that opening drive. I understand that feeling. I am not of the opinion that a head coach should automatically want to defer and take the second half kickoff. I do understand the philosophy of the double dip, right? What you want to do, what you hope you can do, is have the final drive of the first half, score points, and even if you don't, you want to come out in the third quarter with the ball and then put points on the board then. See, you want the opportunity to have back-to-back drives by scoring points when your opponent doesn't get to touch the ball. It's the only time, right? It's the only time during the game where you actually have a normal progression of events where your offense gets the ball twice in a row without the opponent ever touching it. I understand that. That's the impetus behind people saying they'd rather kick off at the beginning of the game. Well, I happen to believe, as Lane Kiffin does, that there are times, not always, but there are times when you want the opening kickoff of the game because you want your offense on the field first and you want to build some instantaneous momentum for your club. I think it depends on the individual circumstances, the opponent, the weather, if you're home or away, the specific matchup, the proficiency of your offense. Okay? I think all of those things come into play. I don't think it should be an automatic that, I don't want the opening kickoff. I hope I lose the coin toss because, actually, I hope I win the most people want to win the coin toss so they can defer and get the second half kickoff. Well, if I win the coin toss and I have the choice, there will be instances where I would take the ball first. Not always, but there would be instances where I would. I do understand what Lane Kiffin preached to Jaxson Dart about taking that opening kickoff and scoring first. It can make a big difference. Isaac Moore, 1248, says, let's go Dart, make it 4 in a row. MB Goblin says, what is your opinion on coaches that like to opt for the 2-point conversion versus the extra point kick? I don't think you should go for the 2-point conversion early in games. I don't like that because you're always chasing it, especially if you miss. You're always chasing the points that you screwed up and that you gave away or that you could have had. I don't like it. I don't like it. I think you go for the 2-point conversion late in a game if you absolutely need it for strategic purposes. But I would never go for a 2-point conversion in the first half of a game. That's for sure. It would have to be late in the game for me to go for 2. I'm just, I'm too much of a traditionalist, and I'm not going with the 2-pointer. The Focus says, I am actually eating and watching you from my laptop right now. Ha. Well, please don't spill anything on that computer. By all means, keep the crumbs away and do not spill your drink. Please. I'm sure the warranty's already out on the machine, so it's not going to help. And I don't want to see you get stuck buying a new computer. Isaac Moore, 1248. Teams are deferring now in overtime too. Well, that I understand. That's a little bit of a different story in overtime because you want to have certainty as to what you're going to do with the ball when you get it. It makes the field goal or touchdown or fourth down question a lot easier if you're the second team to have the ball. So I don't mind that in overtime. I think that's a good move. I would rather get the ball second in overtime. But at the start of a game, again, that's a different story. Isaac Moore says it's an advantage to get the ball second in OT. I absolutely agree with that. But I'm not talking about overtime. I'm talking about at the beginning of a game. There are times when I absolutely believe it is to your advantage to get the opening kickoff. Salas Fam 2009. Would the reason for acquiring a wide receiver be to try to win the NFC East or continue developing Dart with better wide receivers this season? Well, again, what type of level of receiver are we talking about? If it's a top-notch wide receiver, you'd have to make it twofold. You would want that guy to, yes, absolutely, help Dart improve his passing game as much as possible while he's here. And you would definitely want that guy to be someone who was going to be around for at least a year or two. You wouldn't want him to be a renter player. That's, in all honesty, a renter player may not do much to help Dart. You want this guy to be someone who is going to be committed to being here for a couple of years. That would be number one. But yes, also you absolutely want to believe that you're going to be in some type of playoff conversation in December. That's critical. If you're going to go after a big name guy, you're definitely going to only want to do that, or at least a big reason why you'd want to do that is if you think you can have meaningful games in December, and that guy can help you do that, which is why I asked. If you're thinking about a deal, you're the GM. Are you waiting till you see what the Giants do against the Broncos? If they get to 3-4, or if they drop to 2-5, does that make much of a difference for you? But I understand your point about this. Yes, it is about this year, and if it's going to be about Dart, it also needs to be about the next 2 years, I think. I don't think I'd be very happy with just a renter player. It would have to be a guy who I know is going to be happy here and want to be here and be part of the building process. St. Mucci 13. Hey, Paul, do you think Jalen Waddle would be a good fit here in New York? You may or may not remember. I don't know how long you've listened to me on WFAN or Giants.com or well, certainly I've only been doing this show now for 2 years. I thought the Giants, my target player for the Giants in that draft was Jalen Waddle. I was not a Deonte Smith guy. I was all about Jalen Waddle. I thought that he had a better build physically for the league, so I thought he would hold up in terms of durability. And I just thought he was a more polished type wide receiver. I was always a Jalen Waddle guy over Deonte Smith. As it's turned out, both guys have had really good pro careers. I mean, they've both done some very significant things on their resume. But I was always a Waddle guy over Smith. St. Mucci 13, what's going on with Graham Gano? Gano is on injured reserve. This is now the third game he's missed. He's got to miss at least one more. He says he's feeling terrific and wants to make it back. Right now, Jude McIntyre is the Giants' kicker. Aiden Fink says we need someone who would be a similar reliable wide receiver like Dallas got with Pickens. And Isaac Moore, it's 1248, says, I don't know how we didn't draft Pickens. George Pickens, when he came out, I want to say Michigan State, I loved his tape. Was a huge fan of George Pickens coming out as a player. But there was other stuff. The attitude. George Pickens, not the easiest guy to get along with by many accounts. There was absolutely some attitude issues and other things that go along with drafting a player. And everybody knew that when you drafted George Pickens, there was going to be things you had to deal with. It wasn't just going to be about his incredible talent on the field. And you guys know me, right? I love big play skyscrapers. I mean, my favorite big play skyscraper of all time of the Giants is Plexico Burress. He was a big play skyscraper, changed the entire dimension of the Giants offense. St. Mucci 13, do you think the Giants will make a trade before the Broncos game? No, I do not. And I do think it's possible that their record after the Broncos game could have somewhat of an impact on any trade equation that they might have. Isaac Moore says, oh, you're saying he belongs on the Cowboys. Yeah, George Pickens. Yeah, exactly. He's a great fit for them. Peachwell 50 says, and he's our last guy, I would love to get Waddle, but I think Myers makes more sense. Yeah, Jacoby Myers, I think, is another guy that people have been talking about on the web as a potential guy to get in a trade. Folks, that'll do it for this edition of the Big Blue Breakdown Live. We will be back again with another live edition of the show. We did 2 hours tonight, so we'll be back next Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, another live edition of the program. We didn't get any phone calls. We didn't get any video calls, but we're always here to take them from you, as well as the chat that's on the right side of your screen. The Giants play in Denver on Sunday, 4 o'clock Eastern Time is the kickoff. We will be back on Friday this week with a 20-minute taped edition of the Giants' 3 key matchups to watch in the game. I think you already kind of know some of what I'm going to say in that program if you've been listening to our show tonight. We invite you to come back and listen to that program. That's easy. It's only about 20 minutes, so you can do that while you're noshing on a lunchtime sandwich if you like, or maybe going to work on Friday morning in the middle of rush hour traffic, or for that matter, coming home on Friday afternoon in rush hour traffic. That's a simple 20-minute program. The 3 key matchups, we talk about the injury report, we talk about the status of both teams, and the 3 key matchups to watch if you're the Giants and you want to try to win this football game. That comes back your way on Friday morning. It'll be up there taped on the archive on YouTube, the New York Giants on SI YouTube channel and media network. Then we come back on Monday morning. Okay, on Monday morning, we come back with our game balls and gassers for the New York Giants, the guys who deserve game balls and the guys who deserve to run gassers for not doing a great job. We pick them out for offense, we pick them out for defense, and we pick them out for special teams. And then next Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, we're back here with another live edition of the show as the Giants will then prepare to take on the Philadelphia Eagles at the Link with a chance to sweep their arch rivals in the NFC East. Well, that'll do it for tonight. Folks, I'm so glad that you joined us again on this evening's program, and we do invite you to subscribe so that you don't miss any of our New York Giants content right here on the New York Giants on SI YouTube channel. I'm Paul Dottino. We'll see you next time, everybody.